Captain Daehyun stood on the observation deck of the UES Times Horizon Times and watched the massive station grow larger in the viewport. Assemblage Prime, they called it. The heart of the Galactic Confederation, home to 847 different species, all living together in peace, or so they claimed. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy. First contact had happened 3 years ago, when a Confederation scout ship found one of Earth's deep space probes. The aliens had been friendly. They invited humanity to join them. They promised trade, technology, and a place among the stars. "Captain, we're being hailed," said Lieutenant Bauman from the communications station. "Put them through." Daehyun replied. A face appeared on the screen. It was not human. The creature had 4 eyes, arranged in a square pattern, and skin that shimmered like oil on water. When it spoke, the translation device made its voice sound smooth and welcoming. "Captain Daehyun of Earth, welcome to Assemblage Prime. I am Coordinator Velreth of the Velkari. We are honored to receive you." "The honor is ours," Daehyun said. He had practiced this speech 100 times. "Humanity is grateful for this opportunity. Please dock at Bay 17. We have prepared quarters for you and your delegation. Tomorrow, we will present the integration protocols." The screen went dark. Daehyun turned to see Haejin standing behind him. She was Earth's chief xenolinguist, responsible for understanding alien languages and customs. Her face showed worry. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "Integration protocols," she said. "That's not what they called it before. In the original messages, they said partnership agreements. Maybe it's just a translation issue," Daehyun suggested. Haejin shook her head. "I've been studying their language for 3 years. The word they used translates more accurately to absorption or incorporation, not integration." Daehyun felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. But they had come too far to turn back now. Earth needed what the Confederation offered: resources, knowledge, protection from whatever else was out there in the dark. The next morning, they were escorted to the Grand Council chamber. It was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that Daehyun could barely see it. Thousands of aliens filled the curved rows of seats, representing every species in the Confederation. The air smelled strange, full of 1,000 different scents from 1,000 different worlds. Coordinator Velreth stood at the center podium. Behind him, a massive holographic display showed Earth spinning slowly in space. "Members of the Confederation," Velreth began. "Today we welcome the humans of Earth into our great collective. As is our custom, we have evaluated their species according to our standards." Daehyun glanced at Haejin. She was staring at her datapad, fingers moving quickly across the screen. She was running the translation software, checking every word against the linguistic database. "The humans have been tested," Velreth continued. "They possess adequate intelligence. They have developed basic technology. They are physically capable. However, they have scored Class 9 on the psychic resonance scale." A murmur ran through the chamber. Daehyun did not understand why, but he could feel the mood shift. It was not a good shift. "What does Class 9 mean?" he whispered to Haejin. Her face had gone pale. "It's the lowest possible rating. It means we have almost no psychic ability." "So what?" Daehyun said. "We never claimed to be psychic. I don't think you understand," Haejin said, her voice shaking. "Every species in the Confederation is psionic. That's how they communicate across their empire. That's how they maintain order. Species without psychic ability are considered lesser." Velreth raised one of his forearms. The chamber fell silent. "The humans are classified as suitable for Category 5 integration. The protocols have been prepared. We will now vote on acceptance." "Wait," Daehyun said, stepping forward. "We haven't seen these protocols. We need time to review them." Velreth's 4 eyes fixed on him. There is nothing to review, Captain. The protocols are standard for all Class 9 species. You will be integrated into the Confederation as a labor caste. Your people will be assigned to various worlds and facilities where their skills can be utilized. The words hit Daehyun like a physical blow. Labor caste? You mean slaves? We do not use such primitive terms, Velreth said coldly. You will be members of the Confederation. You will have purpose. You will contribute to the greater good. Both? 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 No. Daehyun said. Absolutely not. We came here as equals, seeking partnership. Not this. You are not equals, Velreth replied. You cannot be equals. You lack the fundamental capability that defines civilized species. But do not worry. We are not cruel. You will be treated according to the standards of productivity and compliance. Haejin was typing frantically on her datapad. Suddenly she grabbed Daehyun's arm. The protocols, she hissed. I've accessed them. It's worse than slavery. They're planning to separate families. They'll take children at age 7 for specialized training. Adults who resist will be eliminated. Daehyun felt rage building in his chest. He turned back to Velreth. We refuse. Earth refuses these protocols. You do not have the authority to refuse, Velreth said. The decision belongs to the Confederation Council. We will now vote. All in favor of accepting Earth? Under Category 5, Integration. Under Category 5, Integration. Under Category 5, Under Category 5. What happened next would haunt Daehyun for the rest of his life. Across the chamber, lights began to glow. Each species had a voting panel. One by one, the lights turned green. Yes. Accept. Enslave. Daehyun watched in horror as every single light turned green. 847 species. Every one of them voted to enslave humanity. The vote is unanimous, Velreth announced. Earth is hereby integrated into the Galactic Confederation as a labor caste species. Enforcement fleets are already moving into your solar system. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. You can't do this, Daehyun said. But his voice sounded weak, even to his own ears. It is already done, Captain. You may return to your ship. You have 72 hours to inform your leadership of their new status. After that, the integration process will begin. The guards escorted them out. Daehyun's mind was racing. He had to warn Earth. They had to prepare defenses. They had to do something. On the ship, Daehyun immediately opened a quantum communication channel to Earth. Minho, the defense coordinator, answered within seconds. What happened? Minho asked. Your biometrics are spiking off the charts. It's a trap, Daehyun said. All of it. They never wanted partners. They want slaves. Minho. They voted. Every single species in the galaxy voted to enslave us. D4 bulls. There was silence on the other end. Then, Minho spoke, his voice hard. How long do we have? 72 hours before they start the invasion. Then we have 72 hours to prepare, Minho said. Get everyone home, Captain. We're going to need every person we have. Daehyun looked out at the massive station, at the thousands of ships representing hundreds of species. All of them had agreed. All of them supported this. Humanity had reached for the stars, hoping to find friends. Instead, they found the entire galaxy standing against them. The Times Horizon Times turned away from Assemblage Prime and began the long journey home. Behind them, the Confederation was already mobilizing. War fleets gathered. Slave processing centers were prepared. Everything was ready to break humanity and force them into chains. But in that moment, as Earth's first starship fled through the darkness, something changed in Daehyun's heart. The hope and wonder he had carried all his life burned away, replaced by something colder and harder. They thought humanity would submit. They thought humans would accept their fate, like all the other species had. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Confederation warships appeared in Earth's orbit like a swarm of locusts. There were hundreds of them, blocking out the stars. Humanity's defenses lasted 6 hours. Jiwon sat in her small apartment in Seoul, watching the news with her husband and 2 children. The broadcast showed Earth's orbital stations burning. Fighter craft spiraling into the atmosphere. The defense grid collapsing under the weight of weapons that humanity had no counter for. "Mom, what's happening?" her daughter asked. She was only 8 years old. Jiwon did not know what to say. How could she explain that the entire galaxy had decided her family deserved to be slaves? That every species among the stars had agreed humans were worth less than animals? "We have to leave," her husband said. "Get to the countryside. Hide." "There's nowhere to hide," Jiwon replied. She had worked in a factory for 15 years. She understood logistics and efficiency. The aliens would not miss anyone. They would find every human, catalog them, process them. 3 days later, the processing centers opened. Confederation soldiers, members of a dozen different species, moved through the cities with lists and scanners. They were polite at first. They explained that this was for humanity's own good. That humans would be given important work. That families would be reunited eventually. The lies lasted exactly 1 day. Jiwon was pulled from her home on the 4th morning. The soldiers separated her from her husband and children. She screamed and fought. But they held her with technology that paralyzed her muscles. She could only watch as her family was loaded into a different transport vehicle. "Where are you taking them?" she cried. "They are being assigned to their appropriate roles," the translator device said in a flat, emotionless voice. "You will see them again if you comply with integration protocols." That was the last time Jiwon saw her family. She was shipped to a mining colony in a star system she had never heard of. The Draxis system, they called it. 3 planets stripped bare of resources, surrounded by artificial habitats where slaves from 100 worlds worked until they died. On Earth, a young soldier named Taejin watched the aliens march through the streets of Busan. He was 22 years old and had joined the military to defend his country. But his country no longer existed. Neither did any other nation on Earth. The Confederation had dissolved all governments and declared direct rule. Taejin's unit was ordered to surrender their weapons. Most did. But Taejin and a few others hid theirs instead. They met in secret. In the basement of a bombed-out building. "What's the point?" one soldier asked. "Our bullets bounce off their shields. Our missiles can't lock onto their ships. We have nothing that can hurt them." "Then we hurt them anyway," Taejin said. He had watched the aliens execute his commanding officer in the street for refusing an order. The memory burned in his mind. "We make them afraid. We make them bleed." They started small. Sabotage. Destroying equipment the aliens needed. Cutting power to processing centers. It was nothing compared to the might of the Confederation. But it was something. Sun-hee had been an aerospace engineer before the invasion. She had worked on Earth's first faster-than-light prototype. Now, she was forced to maintain alien ships at a military depot outside Beijing. The overseers watched constantly, ready to punish any mistake. But the overseers made a mistake of their own. They assumed humans were too primitive to understand Confederation technology. They assumed wrong. Sun-hee studied everything she could. She memorized the control systems. She analyzed the power cores. She learned how their shields worked, how their weapons functioned. And she made a discovery that changed everything. The shields were controlled by psionic interfaces. The weapons systems used psionic targeting. Even their communications relied on psychic links between crew members. Everything the Confederation did depended on their ability to read minds and project thoughts. One night, as she worked alone in the depot, Sun-hee ran a test. She tried to interface with one of the alien computers using a stolen access device. According to what the overseers had told them, it should have been impossible. Humans did not have the psychic ability to interact with Confederation systems. The system logged her as undetected presence. It could not sense her mind. It could not read her intentions. To the psionic security measures, Sun-Hee simply did not exist. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding. This was it. This was the key. Humans were invisible to their sensors, because those sensors relied on psychic detection. The weakness the Confederation had mocked was actually humanity's greatest advantage. Sun-Hee carefully copied all the technical data she could access. She hid it in a dead-drop location that the Resistance had established. Within a week, the information reached other resistance cells around the world. In a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Washington, D.C., Minho reviewed the data that Sun-Hee had sent. He had been Earth's defense coordinator before the invasion. Now he commanded what remained of humanity's military forces from the shadows. "This changes everything," he said to his staff. "They can't see us with their standard detection systems. We're ghosts to them. But we still can't hurt them," someone pointed out. "Our weapons are useless against their shields." "Then we get inside the shields," Minho replied. "We use their own weapons against them." Across the galaxy, Ji-Wan worked in the mines of Draxus. The conditions were brutal. Humans died daily from cave-ins, equipment failures, and simple exhaustion. The alien overseers did not care. There were always more slaves to replace the dead. Ji-Wan learned quickly that the overseers relied on their psychic abilities to maintain control. They could sense when slaves were planning to rebel. They could read the intentions of troublemakers before they acted. Except they could not read humans. She began organizing in secret. Whispered conversations during the work shifts. Meetings in the deep tunnels, where the overseers rarely went. Slowly, carefully, she built a network of humans who were ready to fight back. 6 months after the invasion, Captain Dae-Yun sat in a prison cell on a Confederation detention station. He and the rest of humanity's diplomatic team had been arrested the moment they returned to Earth. The Confederation wanted them as examples, proof that resistance was futile. But even in prison, Dae-Hyun received messages. The guards thought the human prisoners were isolated, cut off from their people. They did not know about the resistance network that had spread across dozens of worlds. They did not know that humans had learned to communicate in ways that psychic species could not detect. Dae-Hyun got word about Sun-Hee's discovery, about Minho's plans, about the brewing revolts in the slave colonies. He smiled for the first time in months. The Confederation had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed humanity would break like all the other species they had conquered. On Earth, Taejin and his resistance cell hit their first major target. A Confederation command post in the mountains. They used tactics that should not have worked. They approached on foot through the forest. The psionic sensors should have detected them, but humans had no psychic presence to detect. They killed the guards silently and planted explosives throughout the facility. By the time the aliens realized what was happening, it was too late. The command post exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen for kilometers. The Confederation sent reinforcements. They hunted for the attackers, but Taejin and his team had already vanished into the countryside. The aliens could not understand how humans could hide so effectively. They could not sense them, could not predict their movements, could not read their intentions. For the first time since the invasion, humans had drawn blood. In the Draxus mines, Ji-Wan heard about the attack on the command post. The news spread through the slave networks like fire through dry grass. Suddenly, the humans stopped looking, defeated. They started looking dangerous. Ji-Wan knew it was time. She gathered her people in the deepest part of the mines. 200 humans, armed with stolen tools and improvised weapons. They had no chance of winning. But that was not the point. "They think we're broken," Ji-Wan told them. "They think we'll work until we die and never fight back. Let's show them what humans do when you push us too far." The revolt began at shift change. When most of the overseers were distracted, the humans attacked with everything they had. They destroyed mining equipment. They collapsed tunnels. They killed overseers with their bare hands when they had no other weapons. The Confederation forces responded with overwhelming violence. They killed hundreds of humans. But they also learned fear. Because the humans did not stop. Even as they died, they kept fighting. Even as they were gunned down, they kept attacking. By the time the revolt was crushed, 50 overseers were dead. 5 million credits worth of equipment was destroyed. And most importantly, the myth of human submission had been shattered. Jiwon survived, barely. As she was dragged away to punishment, she looked back at the chaos they had created. The aliens were afraid. She could see it in their body language, in the way they moved. They had thought humans were harmless slaves. Now they knew better. Across the galaxy, in 100 different locations, humans received word of the Draxus revolt. In the prisons, in the work camps, in the processing centers, and the factories, and the mines, everywhere humans were enslaved, they heard what Jiwon had done, and they began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could fight back. The Confederation had united the galaxy against Earth. But in doing so, they had given humanity something far more dangerous than any weapon. They had given humans a reason to unleash the fury that slept in every human heart. 2 years had passed since the Confederation enslaved Earth. To most species in the galaxy, humanity was just another conquered race. Cheap labor to be exploited and forgotten. They did not pay attention to the small rebellions. They did not notice the pattern developing. They should have. In her hidden workshop beneath the ruins of Beijing, Sun-Hee worked through the night. Around her, stolen Confederation equipment hummed with power. She had spent 2 years studying their technology, taking it apart, piece by piece to understand how it worked. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning. She had been analyzing the psionic network that connected all Confederation forces. It was like a web stretching across the galaxy, allowing instant communication between minds. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was connected to it. The Confederation used it to coordinate their forces with perfect precision. But Sun-Hee had discovered something the aliens did not understand about themselves. Their psionic network was not just for communication. It was part of how they thought. Their minds were so interconnected that they had trouble functioning without it, and humans could not be detected by it at all. She ran the simulation again, checking her calculations. Then she sent an encrypted message to Minho. "I know how we can win." 3 days later, Minho arrived at her workshop through the underground tunnels that connected the resistance bases. He looked tired. They all looked tired. But when Sun-Hee showed him her discovery, his eyes went wide. "You're saying we're invisible to their entire command network?" he asked. "Not just invisible," Sun-Hee explained. "We're worse than invisible. We're like holes in their perception. When we're near their systems, we create dead zones. They can't sense each other through us. We disrupt their whole network just by existing. Can we weaponize this?" Minho asked immediately. Sun-Hee smiled. "I've already built the prototype. Ever. 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 Ever." She showed him a device the size of a backpack. This amplifies the natural disruption that humans cause to psionic networks. When activated, it creates a dead zone 30 meters wide. Any Confederation forces inside that zone lose all psionic abilities. They can't communicate with each other telepathically. They can't sense threats. They become blind and deaf to their own people. Minho picked up the device carefully. "How many of these can you make?" "As many as you can get me the parts for," Sun-Hee replied. "But there's something else. Something bigger." She pulled up another schematic. "Their ships run on the same psionic network. The crew needs to be psychically linked to operate the vessel efficiently. If we can get enough of these devices onto a ship, we can cripple it completely. The crew won't be able to coordinate. Their systems won't respond properly. They'll be flying blind. We need to test this," Minho said, "on a real target." Far across the galaxy, in the Draxus mining system, G1 had become a legend. After the failed revolt, 2 years ago, the Confederation had tried to break her. They had tortured her, starved her, and thrown her into isolation. But G1 refused to break. Now she worked in the deepest parts of the mines, surrounded by other humans who had proven too rebellious for regular work details. The overseers thought keeping them together in the most dangerous areas would kill them faster. Instead, it created a concentration of the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. G1 had trained them all. Not in how to mine efficiently, but in how to fight, how to kill, how to make every day cost the Confederation more than it was worth to keep them alive. When the encrypted message arrived from Earth through the Resistance network, G1 read it 3 times to make sure she understood. Then, she gathered her people. "They've found our advantage," she told the assembled humans. "We're going to hit them harder than we ever have before. But this time, we're not just destroying equipment. We're taking their ships." The plan was insane. It should have been impossible. But G1 had learned that humans could do impossible things when they stopped caring whether they survived. The attack began during a shift change. G1's people had stolen a shipment of Sunhee's devices, smuggled in through the supply network. When they activated the devices, the effect was immediate and devastating. The Confederation guards suddenly found themselves cut off from their psionic network. They could not sense each other, could not call for help telepathically, could not coordinate their response. They were just individuals, alone and confused. The humans attacked like a wave of violence. They had no fancy weapons, just tools from the mines and a fury that had been building for 2 years. They overwhelmed the guards through sheer ferocity and numbers. G1 led the assault on the main hangar. The Confederation kept ships there for transporting ore off-world, ships that could leave the system, ships that could reach other worlds. The battle was brutal. Humans died by the dozens. But for every human that fell, they took 2 aliens with them. The Confederation forces had relied on their psionic abilities for so long that they had forgotten how to fight without them. By the time reinforcements arrived, G1 and 50 other humans were already aboard a transport ship. They had a human among them, who had been a pilot before the invasion. It was enough. The ship tore out of the hangar and blasted into space. The Confederation fleet tried to stop them, but the transport was fast and small. It jumped to faster than light speed before the larger vessels could get a weapons lock. G1 stood on the bridge, looking at the stars streaming past. They were free. For the first time in 2 years, humans had escaped their chains. "Where are we going?" someone asked. "Everywhere," G1 replied. "We're going to every slave world in this sector, and we're going to free every human we find." On Earth, Taejin had grown from a young soldier into a commander of ghost warriors. That was what they called themselves now. Ghosts, because the Confederation could not see them coming. His unit had perfected the art of stealth warfare. They attacked at night, using the psionic dead zones that Sunhee's devices created. They struck hard and vanished before reinforcements arrived. They made the aliens afraid to leave their fortified positions. Taejin's latest mission was his most ambitious yet. A Confederation dreadnought was in orbit, part of the fleet that kept Earth under control. Intelligence said the crew rotated shifts at midnight. For 15 minutes, half the crew would be sleeping while the other half took their positions. It was a vulnerability. Taejin and his team used stolen shuttlecraft to approach the dreadnought. The ship's sensors should have detected them. But the sensors relied on psionic detection, and humans did not register. The shuttle appeared as nothing more than space debris. They breached the hull using cutting tools and entered the ship during the shift change. Each team member carried one of Sunhee's devices. As they spread through the ship, they activated them. The effect was like a plague spreading through the vessel. Crew members suddenly lost contact with each other. Systems began to malfunction. The ship's psionic pilot could no longer interface with the controls properly. Tajin's team moved through the chaos like demons. They killed the crew with ruthless efficiency. No mercy. No hesitation. These were the aliens who had enslaved their world, who had separated families, who had killed anyone who resisted. The humans had learned to kill without remorse. By dawn, the dreadnought was theirs. Tajin stood on the bridge, looking down at Earth through the viewport. His team had suffered 70% casualties, but they had done it. They had captured a Confederation warship. "Signal Minho," Tajin ordered. "Tell him we have a ship, and tell him we want more targets." In his prison cell on the detention station, Daehyun heard about both victories. The escape from Draxus. The capture of the dreadnought. The news spread through the human prisoners like electricity. "It's time," Daehyun said to his fellow prisoners. "Sunhee gave us a way to fight. Jiwon showed us they can bleed. Taejin proved we can win. Now we show them that nowhere is safe. Not even their prisons." The guards had grown complacent. They thought the prison was secure. They thought humans were too weak to pose a threat. They never suspected that every human prisoner had been quietly preparing for this moment. The breakout began at shift change. The humans had stolen access codes over months of careful observation. They had built weapons from smuggled materials, and they had Sunhee's devices delivered through the resistance network. When the devices activated, the prison's psionic security systems collapsed. The guards could not coordinate, could not call for backup effectively, could not sense the prisoners moving through the corridors. Daehyun led the assault personally. He was not a young man anymore, but he fought with the strength of someone who had nothing left to lose. They freed every human in the prison, hundreds of them, including engineers, soldiers, and scientists. They stole a prison transport ship and fled the station. Behind them, the station burned. The Confederation forces arrived too late. The humans were gone, scattered across the galaxy to spread the resistance to new worlds. As their ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, Daehyun sat in the captain's chair and allowed himself to feel hope for the first time in years. They were winning, slowly, painfully, at terrible cost. But they were winning. Across the galaxy, the Confederation was beginning to realize they had a serious problem. The human insurgency, as they called it, was spreading. Slave worlds were reporting escapes, ships were being stolen, installations were being destroyed. The Council called an emergency meeting. Coordinator Velreth addressed the assembled species with growing concern. "The humans are proving more difficult to control than anticipated," he said. But it was already too late. The Confederation had created something they could not control. They had taken a species that valued freedom above all else, and tried to chain them. They had taken people who would die before they submitted and tried to break their spirits. They had made a fatal mistake. In hidden bases across dozens of worlds, humans gathered and planned. Sunhee built more devices. Minho coordinated attacks. Jiwon freed more slaves. Taejin trained more ghost warriors. Daehyun organized the scattered resistance into a unified force. The Confederation had enslaved Earth expecting submission. Instead, they had ignited a fury that would burn across the galaxy. Humans had learned to fight without honor, without mercy, and without fear, and they were just getting started. 4 years after the chains were first placed on humanity, those chains shattered in a single, coordinated moment that the galaxy would never forget. Minho stood in the command center deep beneath the Antarctic ice. Around him, holographic displays showed 73 worlds where humans were held as slaves. Each world had a resistance cell. Each cell had been preparing for this moment. "All teams report ready," the communications officer said. Minho took a deep breath. This was it. Everything they had built, every sacrifice made, every life lost, all led to this moment. "Send the signal," he ordered. "Free everyone." Across 73 worlds, humans rose up simultaneously. They activated Sun He's devices, creating dead zones in every slave camp, mine, factory, and processing center. The Confederation forces suddenly found themselves blind and isolated, facing slaves who had been waiting years for revenge. On Draxus, G1 led 5,000 freed humans in an assault on the orbital platforms. They used captured ships and makeshift weapons. The Confederation garrison was 10 times their size. But the humans fought with a desperation that turned them into something terrifying. They took losses that would have broken any other species and kept attacking. When the platforms fell, G1 broadcast a message to every human in the sector. We are free. Join us. Fight with us. Make them pay for every chain they put on us. On Earth, Taejin commanded the liberation of Seoul. His ghost warriors had grown from a small cell into an army of thousands. They moved through the city like smoke, appearing from nowhere to strike down Confederation forces and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The aliens tried to use their superior technology, their shields, their weapons, their ships. But Taejin's forces had learned every weakness. They deployed Sun He's devices at every engagement, turning the aliens' psychic network into a liability. The Confederation soldiers fought as individuals against humans who fought as a coordinated swarm. By nightfall, Seoul was free. By the next morning, Busan had fallen to the resistance. By the end of the week, the Confederation had lost control of Earth's major population centers. In orbit, Daehyun commanded a growing fleet of captured Confederation vessels. Every ship they took added to their strength. Human engineers worked around the clock to modify the ships, removing the psionic interfaces and installing manual controls that humans could operate. Admiral, his communications officer, said, Daehyun had been promoted by the Resistance Council. Earth needed military leadership, and he had proven himself capable. We're receiving surrender requests from Confederation forces on 12 different worlds. Accept the surrenders, Daehyun ordered, but make it clear. Any alien who harmed humans will face trial. Any alien who enslaved us will answer for their crimes. Those who want mercy must show us where the prison camps are and help us free the prisoners. Some aliens took the offer, others chose to fight. They died. Sun He had moved her operation to a captured Confederation research station. With access to their full technical database, she had improved her devices dramatically. The new models could disrupt psionic networks across an entire city. The military versions could disable Confederation warships from the inside. But she was working on something bigger, a weapon that would strike at the heart of the Confederation itself. The entire Confederation command structure runs through a central psionic relay on Assemblage Prime, she explained to Minho via secure transmission. If we can deploy enough disruptors there, we could cut off their ability to coordinate forces across the galaxy. We could win the war in a single stroke. How many devices would you need? Minho asked. More than we have, Sun He admitted. But I think I can build something more powerful, something that targets the relay itself. How long? Minho asked. 6 months, maybe less. You have 4, Minho said. The Confederation is starting to regroup. We need to hit them before they can organize a counterattack. Across the galaxy, G1 had become more than a freed slave. She was a symbol. Humans rallied to her banner. Even some non-human slaves joined her cause when they saw humans fighting the same oppressors who had enslaved their own species. She led her growing fleet on a campaign of liberation. Every Confederation slave world in the outer sectors fell to her forces. She did not just free humans. She freed everyone. Thousands of aliens who had been enslaved for generations suddenly found themselves fighting alongside humans against their former masters. The Confederation called her a terrorist. G1 called herself a liberator. History would remember her as both. Taejin's ghost warriors had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. They did not fight like traditional soldiers. They fought like nightmares. They would appear inside enemy installations, having bypassed every security measure. They would strike at commanders, destroy critical systems, and vanish before the enemy could respond. The Confederation tried everything to stop them. They installed non-psionic security systems. They used physical barriers. They posted guards at every entrance. Nothing worked. The humans found ways through every defense. Fear spread through the Confederation military. Soldiers refused to serve on worlds where ghost warriors operated. Officers requested transfers away from human combat zones. The mighty Confederation, which had conquered hundreds of species, was learning what it meant to face an enemy that refused to play by their rules. The Confederation Council met in emergency session. Coordinator Velreth looked older than he had 4 years ago. The stress of the war was visible in his posture. His voice. "We are losing," he said simply. "The humans have taken 40% of our slave worlds. They have destroyed 20% of our military fleet. They have inspired revolts among other enslaved species. This cannot continue. R. 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 We should negotiate," one council member suggested. "Negotiate?" another replied. "With slaves?" "They are already rebelling," Velreth said tiredly. "The humans have shown them it is possible. We either make peace with humanity, or we face the collapse of our entire civilization. There is another option," a third council member said. "We could destroy Earth, end humanity entirely, make an example that no other species will ever forget." The council chamber fell silent. It was the option they had all considered, but no one had dared to speak aloud. "If we do that," Velreth said slowly, "we prove that we are monsters. Every species in the galaxy will see us as genocidal tyrants. We will lose any claim to moral authority. We mod of 34. We mod of 34. We prove that we prove. We lost that authority when we enslaved an entire species," someone else pointed out. Daehyun received intelligence about the Confederation's plans within hours. The Resistance had spies everywhere now. Humans, who passed as compliant slaves while secretly gathering information. Aliens who had turned against their own governments after seeing what was done to humanity. "They're considering destroying Earth," he told his command staff. "We need to accelerate our plans." "Sun He's weapon isn't ready," someone protested. "Then we do it the hard way," Daehyun replied. "We take Assemblage Prime by force. We show them that nowhere is safe. That we can strike at the heart of their empire just as easily as they struck at ours." The plan was insane. Assemblage Prime was the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Thousands of ships protected it. Millions of soldiers garrisoned it. The station's shields could withstand attacks from entire fleets. But the defenders relied on their psionic network to coordinate that massive defensive force. And humans could make that network useless. Minho coordinated the assault. Every human fleet would converge on Assemblage Prime simultaneously. Taejin's ghost warriors would infiltrate the station weeks in advance. Sun-Hee would deploy her prototype weapon, even though it was not fully tested. Ji-Won would lead the ground assault once they breached the station's defenses. It would be the largest military operation in human history, and it would determine whether humanity won its freedom or was exterminated trying. "We're going to lose a lot of people," Daehyun said quietly as he reviewed the battle plans. "We've already lost millions," Minho replied. "This is the last chance we have to make those deaths mean something." Daehyun looked at the display showing Earth, now mostly free of Confederation control. His people had paid a terrible price for their freedom. Families destroyed. Cities burned. Entire generations scarred by trauma and violence. But they had survived. They had fought back. They had proven that humanity would not submit to slavery, no matter what the cost. "Send the orders," Daehyun said. "All fleets converge on Assemblage Prime. We end this war." Across dozens of star systems, human ships began moving. They were not fancy vessels. Most were captured. Confederation ships, modified with crude but effective human engineering. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. By every logical calculation, they should have no chance. But the Confederation was about to learn the most important lesson about humanity. Logic only matters to a certain point. Beyond that, what matters is will, and no species in the galaxy had a will stronger than humans who were fighting for their freedom. The fury that had been building for 4 years was about to be unleashed on the heart of the Confederation. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Jiwan stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the assembled fleet through the view screen. Hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of humans. All of them, ready to die, if necessary. For everyone in chains, she said. For everyone who died fighting. For everyone who still suffers in the camps. For Earth, the crew echoed. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. Their destination, the center of an empire that thought it could break humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The battle for Assemblage Prime lasted 3 days and changed the galaxy forever. The Confederation fleet outnumbered humanity's forces 5-1. They had better ships, better weapons, better training. On paper, the humans should have been destroyed in the first hour, but Taejin's ghost warriors had already infiltrated the station 3 weeks earlier. When the human fleet arrived and the battle began, those warriors activated hundreds of Sunhee's devices throughout the station. The psionic network that coordinated the entire Confederation defense collapsed in seconds. Suddenly, the 5,000 ships defending Assemblage Prime could not communicate with each other properly. They could not coordinate their movements. They could not sense where their allies were or what they were doing. Each ship became an isolated unit, fighting alone against an enemy that moved as one. Daehyun pressed the advantage ruthlessly. His fleet targeted the confused Confederation ships systematically, destroying them one by one. When Confederation commanders tried to rally their forces, Jiwan's ships struck at those command vessels specifically. The Confederation forces fell into chaos. On the station itself, Taejin led the ground assault. His ghost warriors moved through the corridors like death itself. They killed guards, freed prisoners, and destroyed control systems. Every Confederation soldier they encountered faced humans who had spent 4 years learning how to kill efficiently. The Confederation tried to mount a defense, but they had relied on their psionic abilities for so long that they had forgotten how to fight without them. Human forces breached the inner chambers, where the council met. The aliens who had voted unanimously to enslave humanity now faced the consequences of that vote. Coordinator Velreth stood in the council chamber as human soldiers surrounded him. Daehyun walked through the door, his weapon pointed at the alien who had started this war. Captain Daehyun, Velreth said. His translator made his voice sound tired. I remember you. I remember you too, Daehyun replied. I remember every word you said. About how humans were inferior. About how we would make good slaves. About how our lack of psychic ability made us less than civilized. We were wrong, Velreth said simply. Yes, Daehyun agreed. You were. The question now is what happens next. You could kill me, Velreth said. Kill all of us. Take your revenge. The Confederation fleet is broken. You have won. Daehyun lowered his weapon slightly. I could, and part of me wants to. You enslaved my people. You separated families. You killed millions. Every fiber of my being wants to see you dead. But, Velreth asked, but if I kill you in cold blood, I become the monster you thought we were, Daehyun said. You will stand trial. You will answer for your crimes. And the galaxy will see that humans can choose justice over vengeance. In Earth's command center, Minho received the reports from Assemblage Prime. The Confederation had surrendered. The war was over. Humanity had won. He sat down heavily, suddenly feeling every one of his years. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had freed themselves. But the cost had been staggering. 60% of Earth's pre-war population was dead or missing. Entire cities were ruins. Families had been torn apart. The trauma would last for generations. Victory did not erase any of that. "Sir," his communications officer said gently, "the council is calling. They want to discuss terms. Tell them we will be there," Minho said. "But they will discuss on our terms now," Minho said. 1 week later, representatives from across the galaxy gathered at Assemblage Prime for the negotiations. The Confederation was broken, its member species scrambling to distance themselves from the slave trade that had been revealed to the galaxy. Dae-Hyun led the human delegation. Beside him stood Hae-Jin, who had survived 4 years of captivity to become humanity's voice in the negotiations. Ji-won was there too, representing the freed slaves. Tae-Jin stood as a reminder of humanity's military might. Sun-hee attended via hologram, too busy building the new galaxy's infrastructure to attend in person. Minho coordinated everything from Earth. He was the architect of humanity's victory, and now he would be the architect of the peace. The Velkari presented their surrender formally. "We offer complete capitulation," their new coordinator said. Velreth was in a prison cell, awaiting trial. "We will pay reparations. We will accept any punishment you deem appropriate." "We don't want punishment," Dae-Hyun said. "We want change." He activated a holographic display showing the proposed treaty. "The Confederation is dissolved, effective immediately. In its place, we establish the Free Species Alliance. Every species has equal representation, regardless of psychic ability or technological level. Slavery is forbidden under any circumstances. Any species or individual who enslaves others will face immediate military intervention." "You would dictate terms to the entire galaxy?" a Confederation representative asked. "No," Ji-won said, speaking for the first time. "We're offering you a choice. You can join an alliance built on freedom and equality, or you can face a humanity that will never again tolerate slavery anywhere in the galaxy." The representatives looked at each other nervously. The human fleet in orbit made it clear that this was not really a choice. "There will be trials," Dae-Hyun continued. "Everyone who participated in the slave trade will answer for their crimes. Those who ordered the enslavement of Earth, those who enforced it, those who profited from it. We have the records. We know who you are." The Velkari representative shifted uncomfortably. "Some believe you will execute thousands. Some deserve execution," Ji-won said coldly. She had lost her family to the slave camps. She would never forget that. "But we're not monsters. Those who cooperate, who help us free remaining slaves and identify the worst criminals, will receive lighter sentences. Those who resist will face the full weight of human justice." Over the following months, the trials began. The galaxy watched as Confederation leaders faced human judges and juries. Some were executed for crimes against humanity. Others received prison sentences. Many were required to spend years helping rebuild what they had destroyed. Velreth himself was found guilty of crimes against humanity and sentenced to life imprisonment. Dae-Hyun visited him once in his cell. "Why?" Velreth asked. "Why spare me when I destroyed so much?" "Because killing you would be easy," Dae-Hyun replied. "Making you live with what you did is harder. And because someone needs to remember. Someone needs to tell the next generation what happens when you treat other beings as property." Sun-hee threw herself into rebuilding. She established universities on freed worlds, teaching technology to species who had been deliberately kept ignorant. She developed new communication systems that did not rely on psionic abilities, allowing all species to connect equally. "The galaxy was built for psionic species," she told a gathering of engineers from 100 worlds. "We're going to rebuild it for everyone." Ji-won struggled with peace. She had spent 4 years fighting. She had become so good at killing that she did not know how to stop. Returning to Earth, she found her husband and one of her children had survived. Her daughter had died in the camps. "I don't know how to live without fighting," she told her husband. "Then find something worth fighting for," he replied. "The war is over, but there are still people who need help, still injustices to fix. You don't have to stop fighting. You just have to fight for something, instead of against something." Ji-won took his advice. She joined the Alliance Guard, the new military force dedicated to preventing slavery and protecting freed worlds. She spent her remaining years making sure no other species would suffer what humanity had endured. Taejin found purpose in teaching. He trained the new generation of Alliance soldiers, passing on the tactics that had won the war. But he also taught them restraint, how to fight when necessary, but choose peace when possible. We won because we were willing to do terrible things, he told his students. But that doesn't mean we should do terrible things when we have another choice. Be capable of violence, but choose it only when there is no other way. Minho became Earth's first ambassador to the Free Species Alliance. He worked to build the connections that would prevent future wars. He knew that humanity's victory had made them powerful, perhaps too powerful. They needed allies to keep them honest. Power corrupts, he said in his first speech to the Alliance Council. We have power now. We need you to help us use it wisely. We need you to remind us not to become what we fought against. Heijin rebuilt humanity's relationship with the galaxy. She traveled to hundreds of worlds, speaking with species who had feared humans during the war. She showed them that humans were not monsters, just people who had been pushed too far. We didn't want this war, she told an audience on a former Confederation core world. We wanted to explore the galaxy, make friends, learn from you. You turned us into weapons by trying to enslave us. Let's not repeat that mistake with anyone else. 7 years after the war began, Daehyun retired. He returned to Earth and built a small house in the countryside. He spent his remaining years writing a history of the war, making sure future generations would understand both the glory and the horror of what had happened. On his deathbed, surrounded by friends and former comrades, someone asked him if it had been worth it. We paid a terrible price, Daehyun said. We lost millions. We became killers. We did things that will haunt us forever. But we're free, and we made sure no one else will be enslaved. Yes, it was worth it. What? And the galaxy slowly healed. Former slave species thrived under freedom. Technology spread to all, not just the psionic elite. Trade flourished. New alliances formed. Humanity took its place as one of many species working together. But everyone remembered. Every species in the galaxy knew the story of Earth, how the humans had been enslaved, how they had fought back with a fury that shattered an empire, how they had proven that some things were worth dying for. Parents told their children. Teachers taught their students. The story became a legend, then a warning, then a promise. Never again would the galaxy tolerate slavery. Never again would the strong oppress the weak without consequence. Because somewhere out there, humans watched and waited. And if anyone tried to bring back the chains, humanity would respond with a fury that the galaxy would never forget. Earth rebuilt. Cities rose from ruins. Families reunited. Children were born who would never know slavery. Life continued. But humanity never forgot what had been done to them. They maintained their fleet. They kept their warriors trained. They stayed ready, not because they wanted war, but because they had learned the hard way that peace only lasts when you are prepared to defend it. The galaxy had supported the enslavement of Earth. Earth had responded with a fury that changed everything. And in the end, that fury had brought freedom not just to humans, but to countless others who had suffered in silence. The chains were broken, the slaves were free, and the galaxy was reborn into something better than it had been before. But it had taken human fury to make it happen. And that fury, channeled into protecting freedom rather than taking vengeance, became the foundation of a new era. The galaxy would never forget, and humanity would never let them.